Welcome back to another edition of the Talking National League podcast, episode 7 tonight. And it's a very special edition of the Talking National League podcast. I am joined by Ollie Bayliss, well known, over 50,000 followers on Twitter, and also does research for Football Manager Online regarding ratings, etc. and more on that. So, Ollie, I much appreciate you taking the time out to come on tonight's edition of the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Enjoying the fact that it's a bit cooler now. The last couple of days were a little bit too warm, weren't they? A little bit testing, but yeah.
It's a lot better when it's been today and not yesterday, isn't it? When you think of, imagine doing this podcast in 40 degrees, I believe it was. That'd be a bit difficult, I'd have to say.
Yeah, it was. How are you? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm very good now. I don't know if you've heard, but will you be watching Love Island tonight?
I know, that's the big transfer news of the day, isn't it? Yeah. I thought it was finished. How long does it go on for?
I think it's like an extra 10 days. I haven't been watching it for the past about 2 years or so, but yeah.
Yes, I mean it's not the first non-league player to decide to join up with Love Island. I guess if people have missed this today, this is the news, isn't it? The Halifax Town player, Jamie Allen, it sounds like surprised a few people and disappeared off to Love Island to take part. It doesn't sound like from the statement that Halifax put out that they were particularly happy about it. Is that fair?
I would agree with that. Yeah, based off their statement that they put out earlier today. What's your personal opinions on it then? Like me as a Halifax Town fan, it's quite interesting, I have to say. That he doesn't particularly break into the team. He's had his injury problems in the past, and to be honest, even before this, I've never thought that he's been that committed to the club. What are your thoughts then on him going to Love Island?
I think in all these cases, it's players looking out for themselves, isn't it? Non-league it's a short career. It isn't players are paid well enough, I think, at National League level, but they're not earning millions. I think quite often players see it as an opportunity to become a household name, to diversify what they might do if football doesn't work out. We talk about Jamie Allen. He's a player that's been troubled with injuries, as you said. So who knows how long? Hopefully he's got a long football career ahead of him, but who knows? So I think a lot of them, A, it's probably quite a fun experience if that's your sort of thing to be part of it. But B, it can lead to all sorts of other commercial opportunities for them, sponsorships, deals, things like that. So I think quite often players, we've seen it elsewhere. We've seen Finn Tapp, who's been on Love Island. So there's been quite a few, haven't there?
Darlington player and all, isn't there, who's been on?
I think players see it as a once in a lifetime opportunity, and quite often think, you know what, if my club's going to terminate my contracts, and no suggestion that's what Halifax will do, but even if that were to happen, still going to be a footballer that clubs are going to want to sign, actually possibly more so once you've been on the telly. There's that element as well. So I think it's probably a calculated risk on his behalf. It'll be interesting to see what Halifax do. Presumably, he's been taking part in pre-season up to a point.
And he hasn't actually featured in any games, but I think we just thought it was injury. I think that was actually the rumours that he was injured. It's just so... I think we're all just so shocked that it happened this morning. I think it was a joke. I remember someone saying you could literally Photoshop it, that, and you'd believe it, to be honest, that it was that all fake, wouldn't you?
It is one of those sort of, it's the sort of thing that happens in non-league and not elsewhere in the football pyramid. It's
even weird. It's even more weird, me as a Halifax Town fan, because you never see anything like this ever happen with Halifax. Like, I don't know if you know, but we played Hertha Berlin last weekend to then lose a player to go on Love Island. It's been quite a weird couple of days, I do have to say, being an FC Halifax Town fan. But yeah, a lot of those have been positive, I have to say. So obviously you work within the Football Manager. Could you digress a little bit on that?
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of people have played the game or will have played the game, either back in the sort of Championship Manager days, or it's a Football Manager now. It's, for people who don't know, it's a Football Manager computer game, essentially, and within it, it's got a massive database of real life players from across the world. I think it's one of the sort of the deepest and most accurate databases. It's certainly in a gaming sense. I think it's much bigger than say FIFA is. And in order for them to do that, they've got a massive network of people who, like myself, football nerds, effectively, that like to go to games and help them update the database, keep stats up to date. For each real life player in the game, you've got their, what club they play for, height, weight, all that kind of stuff. You've got their appearances, their goals, all that sort of stuff that you might get on say Wikipedia for a player, where all their appearance data, things like that. But then you've got their attributes, so how good they are at crossing, how quick they are, stamina, their decision making, all that sort of stuff. Part of my role, it's only a small role, it's something that I do for the fun of it, really, because I love the computer game.
It's quite an interesting job, that. I don't think we've ever had somebody on that's actually worked within like the video game sort of genre. But yeah, it must be very interesting for you personally. And I have to say, compared to FIFA, like I personally play FIFA because it's more for the younger generation, I believe, FIFA. However, I have played Football Manager in the past, and I do have to say for Football Manager, it's very accurate, you have to say. Like, there are certain aspects of the game where you think, yeah, they do need to improve on that. But that's like every game, isn't it? Everyone wants to improve a game more. But yeah, it's the likes how they know who's the manager, where they play. They know it's so accurate, and I think a lot of it's down to you. Like the Shea Stadium, they know exactly what the capacity is for that. They know who the manager is. They know who the assistant manager is. Even the backroom staff. I think there were once I didn't even know who the backroom staff were for Halifax at one point, and Football Manager pointed that out to me who they were. So yeah, I do much appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a big team, and it'd be overstating my part to say that I'm a tiny part in that kind of non-league research community, let alone the sort of whole game. But it's the only computer game I think where you can take charge of a non-league team. FIFA, apart from Wrexham, I think they've added, haven't they, in the last year? It'd be nice to see maybe FIFA, in my opinion, chuck in the whole league. I think that'd be great. But you can't really get stuck into non-league management or to doing anything in non-league in FIFA in the way you can in Football Manager, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the reason that I've always been known to potentially sometimes go on Football Manager and play it. Like personally for me, like I've mentioned, I prefer actually playing. I know it's more about tactics in it and the tactics side of football with Football Manager. And the reason that I think a lot of people play it, especially in non-league, because you get to use your club in that non-league world. And it goes down to the National League North and South, which is relatively low level for English football to introduce into a football game. Like you could be a manager at the likes of Farsley Celtic, no disrespect to them, but that's exactly what you could literally manage, and that's how good the game actually is and how they're progressing. And I have to say, over the course of every year, Football Manager is a game that always looks out to improve, and they do it for the right reasons, which is something that I'm sure FIFA can try and improve on in the near future. Just out of interest, if let's say FIFA did add non-league teams, would you be able to like get involved in the ratings, etc.?
Firstly, it'd be good if they did. I think they're changing the licensing, aren't they? So have, I think, not got the agreement to call it FIFA in a couple of years' time. So whether they're going to look to change the game a little bit and look at other licensing and deals, I don't know, but it'd be nice. It'd be something that'd be quite fun to do. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's I've got a fair bit on my plate as it is, but hey, you never say never. It'd be I think that'd be quite fun to work with. Anything where you can kind of blur what you do day to day with something that you kind of love or enjoy doing, I think is amazing. So that'd be really good, and it'd be good to see more non-league in FIFA. I think I don't know how you feel. I think there's quite a lot of probably National League fans that were maybe a bit miffed that Wrexham in the game this year, and your Notts Counties and your Barnets, your Chesterfields, your Halifax Towns weren't in the game. I think that.
I'd agree with that. I think we all, every season, it's always rumoured, isn't it, that teams are going to be added to FIFA, the database, and a lot of people were saying last FIFA they were testing it out with Wrexham, see how many teams would use them initially. And a lot of people say, no, it's definitely going to be added this year. Well, we have it every single year. There's always rumours. I know in the trailer last year, I think they were Barnet and Stockport Stadium, which were introduced and shown in the trailer. However, neither of those sides were actually introduced into the game. Yeah, it would be good for me personally. I think that's one of the main reasons that I want to get to Halifax to get to the Football League, is to use FIFA and use Halifax Town. And I think that's something that all clubs want. And yeah, hopefully one day FIFA can introduce that. A bit more on Jamie Allen. Then will you be lowering his rating when he comes back to Halifax?
It'll be interesting to see, won't it, what the club do, because I guess in one hand you want to kind of set yourself a bit of an example for other players, that I guess you've got certain contractual rules and things that your players sign up for, and what you do with that player when he comes back if he's just disappeared and not really informed the club what he's going to do. On the other hand, if you've got a player coming back to your club that's now kind of got a bit of national media attention, some ways that might put a few extra people in through the gate that might come and watch a game. I think there's a lot of people that aren't particularly interested in football, but if they get a chance to watch 90 minutes of someone that's been on Love Island do something like that, then it's a success of Soccer Aid and all those sort of celebrity FC games, things like that. It could be beneficial for the club if they can use it in the right way.
I would take that. I think it is needed that we do have an increase in attendances, and if that does happen, I'm all for it. But I very much doubt that it probably would. And I can't see Jamie Allen staying at the club just based off your experiences with past players. I know it's quite a weird and unknown sort of circumstances what's happened here. Do you feel that Jamie Allen will be extending his stay with Halifax when he comes back?
I think that'll be down to the club, won't it? I think if he's on contract at the club, I'd imagine he would probably hope to continue to be a footballer and stay there. And I think because and again, it's not my expertise, Love Island, but the stage he's gone in at Love Island, he's not one of those that's been there since the start, that I think really becomes sort of an established celebrity, and so he might do well to make sort of an impact on the TV in a few days to have such options when he leaves that he wouldn't want to carry on playing football. So I think it's down to the club what they decide that they're going to do. I'd imagine you'd hope they'd welcome him back. At the end of the day, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for players, I think, to take part in it. And I think you can see why players jump at the chance, and you can imagine that they have to keep it fairly quiet as well before they decide to do it. I think they tell everyone, it spoils the shock value of who's going into the villa. There's probably non-disclosure agreements, things like that they've got to sign. So hopefully they're welcoming him back.
Our fans are very miffed by this, I do have to say. I think you'd expect some fan bases would probably be happy about it. I know there's always going to be a divide. Don't get me wrong, there are certain fans who are all for this, and some who are divided, probably like myself. I'm 50-50 what I think of it. But there's especially with Halifax, there's a lot of fans that aren't particularly happy with what's happened. So Ian Birchall's come in the chat, and can I just state he's not the actual Ian Birchall. It is his actual name, apparently. Evening, both. Been looking forward to this. Ollie's very knowledgeable of non-league, so interested in his thoughts on the coming season. We'll move on to a bit on the wage structure and, of course, the infrastructure of the National League as a whole then. So the wage structure, obviously there was, I think, rumours of a salary cap heading into this season. I personally, until I think yesterday when you corrected me, I actually think that it was actually going to be introduced this season. I think we all thought if it is introduced, there are going to be ways to get around it, like the likes of Wrexham. It wouldn't particularly affect them because there's always loopholes within non-league. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that in the near future that it may be introduced?
Yeah, so last summer the clubs voted to sort of allow a working group to be set up to look at it, so to sort of a group to consider the idea and to put forward a proposal. My understanding is it isn't something that's being introduced this year. I think they were talking about maybe £900,000 in the National League at step one, that being the cap. I think there's two ways of looking at it. I think it's, in some ways, we want football to be competitive. We want football to be, as level as possible, I think. But actually, I think in a lot of ways we've probably got that in the National League to a point. I think we see every season that surprises that there's teams with smaller budgets, smaller fan bases that can do well. I think it's tricky for the National League to go it alone to introduce it, because if you were to introduce a salary cap in the National League but not in the Football League, not in the Premier League, it vastly reduces the sort of pulling power of the clubs in the National League, doesn't it? We've seen such sort of big signings, players going to clubs like Wrexham and Chesterfield and Notts County, partly because of the money they can offer. If they can't offer that money, then you're devaluing the sort of the whole product of the league a little bit, I think. You also sort of chuck in that these players are not earning a fortune, cost of living crisis and everything else. These are players that are trying to make a living in quite a small window of a career. I think limiting that is probably not necessarily overly fair on some of the players as well. It's not just the big signings. It's if you've got a, average out £900,000 cap across a 25-man squad, is your second or third choice goalkeeper then going to see a reduced contract because of that? These are players that, need the money and not making a huge amount from the game. So I think in a lot of ways it would be difficult to enforce as well, wouldn't it? We've seen financial fair play not working particularly well, I think it's fair to say, in the the Champions League level of clubs. Well, if UEFA's lawyers can't make it stick, what chance of people in non-league got to sort of monitor it and to do anything about it if clubs do breach it? You need very transparent financial processes in order to do that. And actually, have the National League got the resources and the will to do that? I'm not sure. They're going to end up spending a lot of money on lawyers and accountants to monitor this stuff when they could be putting the money in somewhere else.
Yeah, you have to admit it's such a competitive league, this league. Obviously, there's a huge divide in clubs based on fan bases, history, etc. There's a number of factors. However, it is very competitive. I've stated it's one of the most unpredictable leagues, if not the most unpredictable league in the whole of England. I think there's like a bit of a debate between this league and the Championship. However, I think I'd have to say the National League is the most unpredictable league, just based off past experiences of what I've seen with the likes of Sutton, Harrogate, Barrow, who've all got promoted to the National League. And you have to admit, these sides didn't spend the most amount of money in the league, and they still managed to find a way up into the higher tier of English football, into the Football League. So why does it really need to be reinforced? Like, for me personally, I think being a Halifax Town fan, I think it'd probably benefit us with Wrexham, Notts County, Chesterfield, all these big clubs with big histories. It'd probably benefit us and the smaller clubs, even smaller, the likes of Wheelstones, etc. If there was a sort of fair play sort of rule heading into salary cap into next season. However, is it fair on those clubs? If I was a Wrexham fan, would I want that? No, I wouldn't. You want to try to get out of this league, and they've spent, I think, 15 years in this league now. That's a very, very long time. It's a decade and a half. It's probably fair to say that they deserve this investment to try progress to the Football League now. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, they've been, I think, a real benefit to non-league, to be honest, as have Notts Counties, all those former league clubs that are now in the National League. I think it massively raises the profile of the National League, doesn't it? I'm sure those clubs are perhaps not particularly delighted to be at that level, but it does it. It raises the profile, it raises the interest. I think Wrexham have been knocking on the door, haven't they, the last couple of years as a Notts County. At some point, I think they're probably going to get over that hurdle, but it's such a competitive league to
you've got
get
sides,
out of, isn't it?
You've got sides in this league that have ambitions, like Wrexham, even Notts Counties, to get to the Premier League one day. And in fact, we've got former Premiership sides like Oldham, Scunthorpe, well, not Scunthorpe, apologies, Oldham, who've come down to the non-league, who've been in the Premiership, Notts County, obviously in the old First Division. It's huge, this league, and it does bring like media exposure with it. You think of sides like Wrexham, we're getting Americans now coming across to look at this league and assess this league, the National League as a whole, and BT Sport helped with that too. It's a great advert for non-league to have sides like your Notts Counties, your Wrexhams, and even your Oldham's coming down now. So yeah, I think it's fair that they're allowed to spend this money because overall it is benefiting the league with these calibre of players and improving it too.
Yeah, and I think for me, any kind of financial fair play model, you want to link it to income, I think. So if you've got a big fan base, if you've got lots of people spending money at the club, then I think you've got every right to spend a percentage of that on players and on recruitment. I think as long as that happens, there's not so much of a risk of clubs overspending. I think the risk comes in when clubs spend money they haven't got, or they haven't got the fan base and the kind of consistent revenue in order to reinvest that, and they get tied into spending more than they've got. But it all adds to the products of the league. If you look at now the amount of games that are being televised, you look at that deal with BT Sport at the moment. There's so many interesting clubs, so many interesting games in the National League. You don't have to be an avid follower of any of the clubs to see the appeal in watching one of these games on a Saturday on BT Sport, because there's so many different angles. There's so many kind of former Football League clubs, or there's York City who have come up again, a bit of a sleeping giant. You've got your Dorking Wanderers that are at that level for the first time, mixed in with your Barnets and your Notts Counties and your Chesterfields and your Wrexhams, all these big clubs that have got big reputations and big fan bases playing in nice stadiums. I think it's a really exciting league at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Would you say this league has the biggest divide with the big clubs to the small clubs than any other league in the English football system?
I think I think the Premier League probably has more, but beyond that, maybe. I mean, you're going into a season and you're looking at it, and you'd be surprised, I think, if Maidenhead United or Maidstone were to win the league. But we have seen in the past sort of well-established upper mid-table clubs having a good season. Sutton United the year before they got promoted. Harrogate Town. These are clubs that have been well-established in the league for a while, but non-league names. Non-league clubs that have existed in those kind of circles that kick on, have a really good season, get the recruitment right. It's what Boreham Wood nearly did to get into the playoff final. If you get recruitment right, if you get the right squad together and a bit of momentum, there's no reason that you can't get into that playoff mix and get promoted. The sort of 16 playoffs make it such a lottery for teams that I think all but maybe 3 or 4 clubs going into the start of the season would consider themselves an outside chance of getting into the playoffs this season if they had a good campaign. So I think, yeah, you have got a divide, you have got those big teams, but I think almost every club going into the season maybe fancies the chances of nicking 7th with a good campaign.
I think a Woking fan's come in the chat just now and said, thank you to Ollie for keeping legions of non-league fans same, I think, during lockdown with the updates on the state of play. Yeah, that's something that I do want to talk a little bit about with lockdown previously being. We are more or less post-pandemic, dare I say it now. Afterwards, I have seen a few of your interviews before with, I think Paul Mace, you've done one with other people surrounding non-league during the pandemic. Do you think that now we're in a very good position heading into the upcoming years with non-league post-pandemic?
I think we're in a better position than we have been for a while. It's still ticking on, isn't it? It's still that concern now that I think is sort of in the back of our minds rather than in the forefront with cases, and we're going into, I don't know what wave we're into now, but going into another wave of cases. So I think the potential is always there, unfortunately, especially at the moment. The potential is always there that we start a season and something happens that means that we have to reduce the number of fans in stadiums, things like that. Hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully we can have a full season, we can get another season completed, and that doesn't happen. But you would hope, and I'm not sure how much confidence I've got that it is happening, you'd hope that footballing authorities are putting in place contingency plans and plans for what we can do if it does happen again, because I don't think any of them can say that it was unexpected, to say that they've been caught off guard in the way that 2 years ago everyone was caught off guard. 2 years ago when the pandemic hit, nobody expected that to happen. No one in football could plan for that. Now they should be planning for it. Now we should know what happens. We should know what percentage of games need to be played in non-league for a season to count, to not go into this sort of null and void points per game debate again. My understanding is there isn't anything hard and fast in the rules that still says what happens if that happens. I think, fingers crossed, we'll be fine. We're getting fans back now in unlimited numbers. I think that's the crucial thing, because if you get fans back, you can fund football and they can keep going. All the problems happened when you couldn't have full capacity crowds, because then clubs couldn't fund themselves and they're looking for funding elsewhere, and that's when it all unravelled a couple of years ago.
Would you say that lockdown and COVID has benefited certain clubs now heading into this season? Like, we've seen a significant increase in attendances, the money that's being splashed around, just the overall healthiness of the National League is a lot better now prior to COVID. Do you think that it's benefited the league?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? And it's not just the National League. You go all the way down the divisions and you're looking at clubs in step 5 that getting 500-600. Clubs that were getting a couple of hundred before the pandemic. I think a lot of things have happened. Yeah, I think people missed football, so I think people have come back in greater numbers since they've been allowed to. I think that's part of it. I think the growth in social media is probably helping to a point as well. I think maybe to a point that, obviously we were using social media before the pandemic, but actually focusing on local football and the amount of people that have done some great stuff in terms of covering the game since the pandemic, I think has helped raise its profile. I think COVID has forced people to look a bit more locally as well. People are no longer, travelling miles for work. They're no longer, considering necessarily the national picture when it comes to their own lives. A lot of people are looking at their own high street or are trying to stay local, and I think that to an extent that passes itself on to football as well. And I think it's almost become, it's a bit like the sort of the craft beer movement, really, to use a bit of a sort of a clunky analogy. You're always going to get people that like the sort of the mainstream on tap sort of lager, but you also, I think now there's something a little bit trendy about knowing something or following something that other people don't. I think a lot of people have found non-league football and quite like now that they can, passionately say that they watch non-league football, that they're a non-league fan, that they go to something that not everyone else does. I think, it used to be something that people would maybe whisper quietly that actually, they didn't support Premier League team, they supported non-league teams. Now it's something people are proud of.
Yeah, I do have to say, being a Halifax fan, I'm proud to be following a non-league club. Like, it's easy to go and follow one of the big clubs, or even one of the big local clubs to me. For example, Bradford, Huddersfield, Leeds. But it's it's just a nice feeling, going to a side like Halifax and sticking through them thick and thin, which is something that I plan on doing for the rest of my life. But yeah, there's a lot of sides now, considering previous and during COVID, the financial structure now of their club, it's a lot better compared to previously. Dare I say, I know there's clubs still going through financial difficulty. For example, Yeovil there, I think, having a few issues off the field. Scunthorpe with the relegation's not helped them. Oldham, I think, are fine now with the new ownership too. It's looking good, isn't it, the National League heading into next season? Financially, that all clubs have, got equal rights as fans to be seeing a club that's competitive, and there's no issues off the field, is there?
Yeah, it does feel like that, and actually, I think when we're talking about financial fair play, something the National League point to is that I don't think they've ever had a club go bust. Technically within the league, obviously Macclesfield sort of were relegated and then went bust before the new season. But actually, generally, the clubs in non-league are pretty well run and are sustainably so. Going into this season, last season I think 3 clubs were going to go down. I think we all sort of assumed before the start of the season that Dover were going to be one of them, partly because of that points deduction. We're going into this season, and it's very hard to pick out 4 that are going to go down. 4 teams are going to be relegated. It's hard to pick that out. It's hard to pick a clear winner this season. I think it's going to be a tight season. I think it's going to be competitive. It's good that it gets going earlier. I think last season it felt like we were waiting and it was finishing late. It's good. I think the scheduling this season, brings it in line with the Premier League and the Football League. And actually, depending on how probably England do in Qatar, there's a big old window when non-league football is going to carry on, and the Premier League and the Championship.
I am looking forward to that window. Yeah, I think
a lot of it probably depends on how England do, doesn't it, and how excited people get about the World Cup and in England. But even so, to watch local live football, not many of us are going to be flying out to Qatar. So to actually watch live football, non-league clubs always benefit during international windows because people come down and watch a bit of non-league football. So that potentially could have a boost as well.
Especially with like offers as well coming in. Like obviously, as you know, many clubs introduce offers during international breaks. I'm sure they'll introduce this more with more depth, probably because clubs, as we speak, will probably maybe planning for this to try increase attendances during the World Cup. And I think saying like discounts for people who've got season tickets in the Football League will also benefit them too during that time period. So yeah, just a bit on Yeovil Town then. Is there an update on them off the field? Because it's a bit it's hard to explain what's really going on there, to be honest. Like, you look at the manager appointment, he's a big name within BT Sport, Chris Hargreaves. But there's a lot of issues going off the field, with players, recruitment. I think for them has been quite poor. What's the update on them?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen what everyone else has seen, really. I think that, the club of, or the fans or certain fan groups within the club, probably not representative of every fan, have put out statements about, being unhappy with the ownership and discussions with the ownership. I think owner is, keen to move on and sell the club. I think that's been, well documented, but it's one of those where how easy that is to do. Selling a football club is something that very few people have experience of, and I imagine is not straightforward. I think the fans are frustrated that they're a former EFL team that now appear to be looking increasingly like sort of a mid-table National League team. Probably, fair to say. I think it would surprise a few if they would.
we cut out? I think we may have. Apologies for that. I'll bring Ollie back into the studio as soon as possible. Yeah, I've had a few people coming in the chat with your messages just whilst Ollie tries to sort that out. Ali's come on, Ian's come on. Chris, you had to bring up that last game. Still scared. Is that the one of FC? I'm guessing Notts County versus Halifax, where we drew 1-1 last season, and of course the 3-2 victory. I know you've mentioned you didn't want me to mention that. However, with Ollie leaving, blame him for leaving. I will have to mention that. I'll just see if there's been any update. No, I think we're having a few connection issues. Just whilst I wait for Ollie to hopefully join us back, please bring in some questions for me, potentially about the National League heading into next season. It will be most appreciated whilst Ollie tries to sort out the internet. But yeah, certainly going to be a very, very interesting campaign heading into next season. Potential away games I'm looking forward to, I have to say. Notts County, as usual, Chesterfield, all these Wrexhams, I enjoy every single away day that I go on, and especially the likes of Notts County away. I have to agree, I know we've got a few Notts fans in the stream. It's good. Someone's come on and said, will you be doing predictions vid, Luke, soon? I'll give you a quick sneak preview. Next week, yes, we will be doing our predictions. Hopefully I'll be getting a guest on then. Ollie did join us. I'll hopefully try bringing back in, yeah. I won't tell you any of my predictions tonight, but yeah, they're going to be very interesting. I'm sure Woking will have a successful season heading into next campaign. So yeah, Ollie, I think, is back now. Welcome back.
Did I go or did you go? I think
you went, to be honest.
I'm sorry. I've given the router a kick. I think you lost me halfway through Yeovil Town, didn't you? I think.
Yeah, Yeovil Town.
I think I was just saying there clearly seems to be a bit of discontent between the fans and the ownership, but it's I think probably something that we all hope gets resolved, so that because they're a big team, they're a good team for the National League level, and you want to see them firing on all cylinders again, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll just say, your camera seems to be a bit laggy. However, we can hear you totally fine. It's just like it's a bit glitchy, your actual camera.
Okay. Is there anything I can do to improve that?
We can still hear you loud and clear. It's just the camera.
Okay.
It's like a bit glitchy. It's like lagging a little bit.
Let's try that. There we are. I'm back on the Wi-Fi again.
We've gone again. Yeah, keep sending your questions in then during we try. Oh, there we go. We're back. You're fine now. Totally fine. So
excellent.
Yeah, ready to go. So yeah, I'll move on to a little bit about Altrincham then. Now they've gone into the full-time module. How do you see them doing next season, and how do you think it will benefit them?
I think they're trying to make that sort of step up to become a established National League side. And there are not many clubs now in the National League that aren't that full-time model. I think Wealdstone might still be one that
Wealdstone,
Maidenhead, yeah. There are not many, and I think it's probably difficult to attract professional footballers to your club unless you're a professional club. You're looking at all the signings we've seen over the last month or so, players moving from League One, League Two into the National League, and I think there's a lot of pulling power at clubs at that level, but not if you're not full time. It's probably difficult. It's probably difficult to be able to do that. So they're obviously looking to make that step up and probably gamble on being all right again this season. They had a good campaign last season, didn't they? Finish mid-table 14th, I think.
Yeah, lower mid-table. Yeah, it was something like that, I believe. But yeah, I think Altrincham next season, they've got to try progress now. They've always been that probably stereotypically known as a non-league club, I have to say. When I look at Altrincham, they've never been in the Football League. They've always been like National League, National League North, that sort of tiers where I think a lot of people say that's where they belong. However, it's getting to the point now where they're having crowd increases. I think they were getting over 2,000 last season, which is very good for them when you think of where Altrincham is and the size of clubs around them. They were doing very well last season. It's time now for them to try progress and take it on to that next stage, and hopefully one day try to get into the Football League and be more competitive on the attacking side of the division in the top 10, the top half of the table. Yeah, I think the signs that they've made they've been proper sort of Football League sort of signings, full-time sort of signings. You think of players like Josh Lundstrom coming down into the division, play from Cooper, I think from Rotherham as well. I think it will benefit them next season. However, we have seen before, it does take time to progress and adjust to the full-time module. Now, you also lose certain players who have a good job on the side that obviously don't want to go into the full-time module. So it could go either way. I think it will benefit them long-term. However, this season, I can't really see a significant improvement for them.
No, I was a little bit surprised. I think that the sort of bookmakers and odds are not everything, and bookies don't always get it right. But I think they've got them as sort of one of the favourites to go down. Altrincham certainly to be expected to sort of be in that bottom cluster of clubs. I think there's no reason they can't have another season like last season and consolidate themselves as a established National League side.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, yeah, I want to move on to a little bit more on Scunthorpe then and Oldham, who've come down to the division. Oldham are in a lot better place now, I have to say, with the new ownership. The signings have been fairly impressive, I have to say. You'd expect them to be in the top half, potentially playoffs. Scunthorpe, on the other hand, they're currently in quite a difficult situation. You've seen them get a bit of media attention online on a negative note with what's going on behind the scenes at Scunthorpe. They're currently struggling, aren't they? You think of them, they've always been known, I think when I'm watching a video on this, they've been known as a small side that always punch above their weight, heading to the likes of the Championship, and they were an example of a good run club. However, now in this current climate and the current situation, they're not in a good place, are they? And I think a lot of them a few people out there are actually predicting them to go down next season.
I think it looks like from the players they've got or managed to keep Scunthorpe, I personally I think they'll be clear of danger. I think that it's not a case of, and very few clubs come down and go straight back up, and I think that's probably not something that we can expect from Scunthorpe or probably Oldham. Although Oldham seem to have, as you said, sorted out issues and recruited fairly well. Oldham, Scunthorpe they've signed Jacob Butterfield, who's a good experienced league player. If you put in players like that still. A player that recently been at Luton and Derby. If you put in players like that, then you've pretty got a project there that you can convince players that it is worth investing in. I think they've let players go. Scunthorpe, they've lost players, but actually, I think you look at the squad they've got. I'd expect them to be all right. I think.
Yeah, I would probably agree. I think probably mid-table for them. Just try stabilising this division and hopefully, like we've seen other sides in this division before, try progress and finish higher up the league. So there's been a lot of rumours, I think, for many years. A lot of people are wanting it, begging it, a lot of National League sides especially, about that extra promotion spot. However, there are a few obstacles in the way to introduce this. I think it's not as plain and simple as people are making out who are, putting various tweets out. Obviously, Football League sides, I think it goes down to a vote for them. I think they have to all vote. 14 clubs in the league above have to vote that they want an extra promotion spot, which initially means for them that there's an extra relegation spot, which you have to admit, there aren't going to be many sides in the league above that are going to agree to those terms, are they? And yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult road to try and get that extra promotion spot.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, it's something that the National League are very keen on, but why wouldn't they be? It's something non-league clubs are very keen on because it's so difficult to get out of the National League, isn't it? It's something that we've seen with, you've got your Wrexhams and your Notts Counties and those clubs that find it really difficult. It's the only place in, that part of the pyramid where there aren't 3 or more promotion spots. And actually every team that has got promoted into League 2 or the old Division 3 since they introduced proper promotion from the conference, none of them ever come straight back down again. They all do fine. They more often than not they have a good season or even they kick on and get promoted again. I think there's a good argument that probably the top 4 or 5 in the National League could be better than the bottom 4 or 5 in League 2. However, yeah, you're right. A League 2 club's going to vote for that. That's the biggest problem. It's something the National League want, but it's very hard to convince EFL clubs that that's what they want, because even if you're not a League 2 club that's struggling towards the foot of the table, do you really want to open the floodgates to a lot of the big clubs in the National League coming into your division. I think actually it suits them quite nicely that there's only 2 that come up every season rather than 3 or 4. Because if it were 3 or 4, you'd see your Wrexhams and Notts County potentially going back up, along with a couple of sort of well-run, established non-league sides that we've seen in Sutton, Harrogate, clubs like that. And I'm not sure League 2 sides necessarily want that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, isn't it, when you consider the sides that are in this division: Wrexham, Notts County, Oldham. Every year you get about 6 clubs, don't you, that could potentially be probably would survive in the Championship when you think of the fan base. Maybe historically have been in the Premiership with Oldham and Notts County, obviously Notts County being the old First Division. It is about time that they introduce an extra promotion spot, because every single year we're getting sides stuck, and sides that are coming down with financial problems and then being stuck here, even when they'll run well, like not Wrexham's have, been stuck here for another, as long as a decade we've seen before, even more with Wrexham. It is about time that they do introduce that extra promotion spot. I always see it as there's a structure with the National League this year, top 6 that desperate, and I mean desperate, to get out of this league. They don't see themselves, and I think they may even be quite embarrassed to call themselves National League clubs. You can tell by the Twitter bios that they post out. They never say proud members of the National League. You also get your mid-table sides that have historically been Football League sides, some like non-league but want to be Football League sides and are not happy to be at this level but are wanting to try progress. Sides like Halifax, Torquay, Aldershot, Yeovil, the list goes on. And then you get your lower clubs that are just happy to be in the National League. They just want to survive. They want to try stabilise in this division. And that's your Wheelstones, your Maidenheads, potentially your Altrinchams. And there's such a divide when you think of sides that have been embarrassed to be in this division, which, brutally honest, they are. They are embarrassed to call themselves National League clubs, to sides that are just happy to be here and stabilising. I know you sort of get that in every division, but it's extended more. Like, I know you look at League One clubs, for example. There's obviously Sunderland previously have been there. We've got Portsmouth, Ipswich now. However, you're still thinking, it's only going to take a season, we can get promoted. Championship, there's very little sides that would call them that are embarrassed to be in that division. You've also got League 2 sides. There's probably only Bradford and Swindon that don't particularly feel that they are League 2 sides by their right to be in that division. Where the National League, there's half the table that want to be in the division above, and there's about 6 of them that call themselves quite embarrassed to be in this division.
Yeah, certainly they don't sort of own the badge of being a non-league football club particularly proudly, do they? And
no,
I think if you're a fan of one of those clubs, you don't want your club to be happy at the level they're at. But those clubs are in this level for a reason. It's quite difficult to get relegated from League 2, if we're honest. If you look at the clubs that have fallen through that trap door, you've got to have a pretty miserable season to get relegated from that level, and all these clubs have. All these clubs
it's usually like financial issues, isn't it? Why they get relegated.
Yeah, exactly. Or points deductions, or issues like that. You've got to have a pretty miserable season over 46 games in order to go down. So, it's something that they've got to own, and they've got to try and reinvest and kick on and get promoted. And there's a lot of clubs, I think, that are trying to do that the right way. To be fair to them, they're trying to rebuild. It's difficult. I think there should be 3, if not 4, promotion and relegation places. It makes no sense that 4 teams can go up from League 2 to League 1, but only 2 teams from the National League to League 2. It's sort of a weird quirk of our system that we have this sort of cut off of a football league. Football league is the 72, the 92 if you include the Premier League, and then non-league below that. And actually, there's very little difference between the standard of the National League and League 2. Really, the National League now is kind of an extension, isn't it? Professional football. Almost every club is professional at that level, and it could just as easily sit as a League 3. It's all about kind of labelling and what you categorise it as. I think there's not a lot of meaningful difference.
Yeah, someone in the chat's actually mentioned that they're wanting the National League to become a League 3, like you just mentioned then. And I think it's something that's been talked about even during the pandemic. I think this is just a rumour. Someone may just have made it up on Twitter and it's gone viral. Basically suggested that there should be League 3, but it's north and south. So you've got obviously your north sides, which is your Halifaxes, your Wrexhams, all those sort of sides, and then you've got your south side, which is your Aldershots, your South Ends, competing. What would your thoughts on that? Like, I think it's very rare it's going to happen. It's more or less impossible that it's going to happen now after the pandemic. What were your thoughts on that at the time?
I think it should be a bit of a badge of honour in this country that we have 5 national divisions. You know, if you look elsewhere in Europe, and you know, you look at Italy, and I think you go down to maybe Series C, you know, 3rd tier, and it becomes regionalised. And in France, it's that level as well. You know, the fact that we've got 5 fully national, almost fully professional leagues, and clubs are able to sustain themselves is incredible. Again, it's sort of turkeys voting for Christmas. I think it was one of the things that was sort of muted by a couple of people during the pandemic, that maybe we look at localizing, you know, League Two and making sort of a North and South version of it. But of course, if you're in League Two, you're not going to vote for that, because it sort of half relegates you. It puts you down in, you know, into a league across 48 teams rather than your 24. I mean, there are arguments for it. The cost of petrol, you know, the cost of moving up and down the country, and you know, the away travel. There's certainly benefits to regional leagues, and that's one of the things that you know, I love about the pyramid as you go further down. When you go down the steps in non-league, the travel isn't crazy. It's a lot more local. It's difficult in the National League, but I think it should be something we celebrate in this country, that we've got 5 fully national leagues.
It goes back to that divide, doesn't it, where you think of sides in the National League, how they can take numbers down south. For example, Wrexham's, and there's other sides that are struggling to get over 30 down south. No disrespect to those. I think people will have different opinions on this. However, I very much doubt that that's ever going to be introduced. For me, it is a privilege having 5 National League divisions. It's something that, as a country, we should be proud of. We probably are probably the best. We have the best probably FA in the whole world. I would probably go as far to say, with the 5 divisions system and all being national, and then you've got below the North and South. And yeah, for me, I love it when you go down south to the likes of Southend, Dagenham, Torquay. It's, you know, it's an enjoyable experience going that far down to then the following week going to Oldham or Chesterfield, which is a derby more or less. But yeah, I'm sure that will never be introduced, and it's going to be an interesting season as a whole, and I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy going to those long distance away games. But yeah, something that I also just wanted to talk a little bit about then. Next season, then, it's going to be a tough National League. It's going to be an interesting one. Like we've mentioned, there's been a big divide. Who would your promotion hopes be?
I think it's for me. It's you got big 3. You've got Wrexham, you've got Chesterfield, and you've got Notts County. I think are probably the 3, with maybe Solihull Moors you can chuck into there. I think for me, Chesterfield, I think, would be my, and basing that sort of no more than a little bit of a hunch, a feeling that they seem to have got the business done quite early. They've got Kabonga Shimanga to come back, which would be massive. I think for me, he's the best striker in non-league football. So the fact that he is back in training, I think he's now doing a pre-season. You know, he was 24 goals from 27 games before he got injured last season. I think, you know, a lot of their fall off last season came when players like that got injured. I think for me, Chesterfield maybe might just pip it, but I think probably expect even more business to come for Wrexham, who like last season sort of bided their time a little bit, didn't they? They signed Paul Mullin quite late in the season. I think looking at targets in the Football League and waiting for those players' options to be reduced a little bit. I mean, they've signed Elliot Lee, which is a massive marquee signing. You know, he's a player that's played, you know, championship level football. Jordan Tunnicliffe as well knows what he's doing. They recruit well. One of those 2, I think. I'm hedging my bet slowly. Chesterfield for me, but could be Wrexham, could be Notts County.
You just like me, to be honest.
Aren't they?
Yeah, just like me. One day I'm saying, Chesterfield, then I'm like, not Wrexham. I can't choose, to be honest. It's so hard to pick. I'm edging towards Notts County at the moment. However, that could change within the next week. Obviously, Wrexham, but I think a lot of people just don't put Wrexham top just because they're predicted by the bookies to come top. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. Just out of curiosity, who do you support? Do you support a non-league side?
So Aylesbury United was the team that I sort of grew up watching. That's where my love of non-league football came from. It's my local town club. They were very, very briefly in the old conference at that level. Then at Step 2 for a long time. Now at Step 4 in the Southern League Division 1 Central. They're still the sort of first result I look out for on a Saturday, I try and get across. I work in local radio. We cover Beds, Hearts and Bucks, and I try and get across sort of a lot of our local non-league teams. But Bayliss United is still one that I look out for.
Is there any football league sort of side that you just think, like, I think a lot of people have a club or just a side that they just look out for? Is there a side for you that you always look out for in the football league?
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal, the sort of Premier League side that I follow, I think a lot of people that have a side in the Premier League that they quite like, and a side in non-league as well. I think there's no harm in that. Locally, Wickham, not far away from here, that's been an incredible sort of journey to watch them the last few years as well. And MK Dons and Luton, Stevenage are not far away as well from here. So they're those ones that I keep an eye out for.
Yeah, Akinfenwa, a player that you particularly enjoy watching.
Yeah, he's an amazing player. He's even bigger. It's even more surreal, I think, watching him in the flesh than you think. He's an incredible player, but a player that, it shows that being a good target man it's not just about height. You look at him, he's not the tallest player. He's just the kind of physicality and the strength and the know-how as well. I don't think he gets enough credit for, or did. Obviously he's retired now, but I don't think he got enough credit for positionally knowing how to use your body and where to be in order to hold the ball up. Excellent player. What a character as well. To prove that you don't have to be in your mid to late 20s to make steps in your football career. When he got let go from Wimbledon, from then to kick on and play for 5-6 seasons for Wickham and to do what he's to at the age of 38 to score in the championship for the first time, incredible. What a character and thoroughly good bloke as well every time I've met him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to quickly just ask you a few questions. I think the class is bold questions. I saw someone do a YouTube video on this. I also saw it on Sky Sports News. So I think I've got overachievers, underachievers, player of the year prediction, top goal scorer, and young player of the year. Are you okay to answer those?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
So we'll start then with I think we'll start with overachievers.
Dorking Wanderers has been an amazing story. They've, a club that have come up from effectively kind of county level of football and promotion after promotion after promotion. A club that I don't think have ever got relegated under Mark White, who's both chairman and manager there, which is very much living the dream. I think if we all could, we'd own a football club and manage them. It's going to be a tough season for them, making a massive step up for the first time to that level. But you never know. A bit of momentum. They've gone up through the playoffs. I quite fancy them to continue to have a good season, I think. So that's overachievers, isn't it? Underachievers. Underachievers is difficult because it's sort of who do people rate that you don't, I guess, isn't it? It's sort of... I think
everyone's saying us at the moment. Halifax, just based off last season.
I think Aldershot could be in for a difficult season. I mean, I don't know if many people are necessarily expecting them to achieve, but fourth bottom last season and had a big turnaround. I think Aldershot could even be one of those four to go down, maybe.
That's quite an interesting one, that, because they haven't done too much business, I have to say, but the addition of Innie Effingham, she's just, it's a significant addition at the end of the day. I think he got about 15 goals, if I'm right in saying, for working last season in the league. Just having a goal score, if he does hit off, benefits your team significantly. But yeah, probably my underachievers, I'd probably say Scunthorpe still. I'm not going to say us because it's Halifax. You can't say that about your own team. But I think it's best signing next. I'll change it a little.
Best signing. There's a couple of. I mean, I think a lot of people are not necessarily rating the season that Eastleigh could have. They've signed a couple of players that I've seen quite a lot of. In Charlie Carter, who was at Stevenage, who I think is quite a good midfielder from National League level. Osanu Cisse as well. He's a good holding midfielder. He's been Football League, he's been League One for a while. I think Max Kretschmar as well, going to Wealdstone. I think that maybe for me, just for the level, you could talk about your sort of bigger signings, your Elliot Lee, your sort of Alex Reid, your high level signing. I think Max Kretschmar for the level he's been signed at Wealdstone to kind of stabilise them. They have a good season. He was good for Woking last season. He's a player that I saw a little bit of Wickham as well when he came through there. I think I think Max Kretschmar to Wealdstone, I think he could be excellent for them this season.
Yeah. I was shocked when I saw that signing. I think it was last weekend or the previous weekend, and I saw it and I thought, wow, that's a right signing for Wealdstone, because I was tipping them for relegation. However, now I'm going to have to reconsider based off the signings they've made. Lewis Kinsell as well from Aldershot, good addition there too. Yeah, I think Wealdstone will have a decent season, and with the additions like that, I'm sure they'll do okay. So yeah, best signing then that you've seen? Not best signing. Apologies, we've just answered that. Who would your player of the year be heading into next season?
I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier on. I think Kabonga Shimanga, I think at Chesterfield, if he gets a full season, the goals he was scoring at Oxford City and then at Boreham Wood, and a Boreham Wood side that were not necessarily free scoring, and then hit the ground running for Chesterfield. It's such a shame for him that he picked up an injury when he did. I think he could easily be player of the season. I think if he plays like he did last season, 25, 30 goals this season potentially from him.
Yeah, there's also like the opinion that he's not going to come back the same player after an injury like that, as horrific as what it was. I think it's quite controversial. I think opinions that you have on him. I think everyone's just thinking it's Tishamanga. Don't matter where he is, he'll always get you, a load of goals, which he usually does, doesn't he? But after an injury like that, will he come back the same player? That's the only thing for me. I think if he does, though, I think Chesterfield could win the league if he's that same player that he was last season, because if you've got a striker that had got about 20 goals and we're only halfway through the season, it was something like that anyway, you're definitely going to be up there, and especially probably favourites to win the league title. But yeah, top goal scorer then.
As we said, I think if he stays fit, he's only 24 as well. I think injuries are obviously setbacks for any player. I think later in their career, I think it's maybe takes more of a toll. No reason he can't be. I think Alex Reid at Solihull Moors is a good player, isn't he? I think Shimanga, if he plays a full season.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm quite. When I'm thinking of top goal scorers, you always say Mullin because it's the obvious one based off the season that he had last season. However, Tishmanga, you've got a shout for him. Finally, then, who are your relegation favourites then so far?
Oh, I think I'll stick with. I named them a minute or two ago. I think Aldershot. I think you'd probably put in that conversation. I think. I think it could be a difficult season for Wealdstone. I think your second season at a level is always quite actually the tricky one. I think,
especially when you're not full time either.
They did really well last season. Where were they last season? They were 16th. That's a very good first season at that level, but it could be a difficult season. But Max Kretschmar could make a difference. I'd maybe put Maidenhead United and Maidstone as well in that mix. Maidstone, I think I like Hakan Heriton. I think he's a good manager, but you'd expect them to be down there as well. Maidenhead United, I don't think have recruited particularly well yet. I don't think they were, in that mix last season.
The only thing I have to say about them is the Josh Kelly player that they've got. He was class last season for them, and I think he's still there with them at this moment in time. I'm not going to mention my predictions yet because I think that's for next week's podcast. I really appreciate you coming on tonight, Ollie. It's much appreciated. I'm sure you're very busy, especially at the moment with it being pre-season. For anyone that is watching that hasn't subscribed, it is most appreciated. Also, drop us a like. It's most appreciated too. Go follow Ollie Bayliss on Twitter. I'm sure he needs more followers. Only being on 50,000 or so, which is currently on. But yeah, Ollie, I do really appreciate you coming on tonight.
No, it's been really fun, and I tell you what, it's great seeing so many people covering the National League and doing their own stuff, and yours is definitely up there. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, also big thank you to everyone that's tuned into tonight's edition, and I will see you next week for my National League predictions.